And I want to briefly talk about what is and is not wrong with the freemen on the land or the sovereign citizen movements. So first, I want to start off with what they get wrong, because they get pretty much absolutely everything wrong, as long as it has to do with the law, legal loopholes, constitutions of whatever country they happen to live in, and basically everything they think about how one interacts with the state. They're also totally wrong when it comes to things like private property, capitalism, the Fed, centralized banking, and money in general. This also includes cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency won't save us. I'm sorry, I know crypto leftists like that, but it's not going to work. You cannot save the world by using a currency that takes more carbon to produce than current fiat currency. You just can't do it. Let's see, what else is there? The gold standard hasn't been a thing for a very long time, and money wasn't inherently better when it was attached to gold. Money is bad. Money is an illegitimate kind of system. Cash isn't any more meaningful when it's on paper than when it's digital ones and zeros. It's all illegitimate, and it's all a tool that's just used to measure value in a market system. And of course, market systems are not inherent. They are necessary, but they are not sufficient for capitalism. Capitalism is more than markets, and markets are a separate entity that are part of capitalism, but also part of other systems. But that also is a huge discussion that I don't know that I have the time for. But if you're like me and you think that value ought not be determined by markets, or that money is the wrong way to determine or measure the value of things that we all need to live, then cash or digital currency, no matter what it is, it's all nonsense. Edwin, Dr. Hodge, and I get into it a little bit, but many of the sovereign citizen types are basing their views on an American-centric understanding of rights. Most of those from Canada haven't even read the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that's a pretty big deal if you're going to use that to as the basis of your arguments. But one of the things they have right is that the countries we live in, the states that we exist within the borders of, are run by corporations. One could make a reasonable argument that states exist in the same way that corporations exist and are legal entities meant to benefit some while exploiting others. If they made those arguments, then I would agree with them, perhaps. They don't, of course, make those arguments. Sovereign citizens in the U.S. argue that the country is actually a corporation and therefore has no legal power over them. And this is just a fundamental misunderstanding of what gives a state its power. States hold power and legitimacy insofar as they are supposed to work in the best interests of the citizenry. Corporations are only beholden to shareholders, whilst states are supposed to be beholden to those who live within their borders. In practice, of course, we know that states are much less legitimate than that, but they still maintain a level of that legitimacy as long as enough of the population believes that they are serving in the public interest. America in particular is showing who it really serves, and capital and corporations, and it's losing legitimacy in the eyes of the public in many ways. This is why we see the uprisings that we do. On one hand, you see uprisings on the left from Black Lives Matter because the power that the state is using to oppress people of color, Black folks in particular, is it's showing the illegitimacy of that state. And on the right, you have a variety of nonsense ideas that lend, but they all are tied on some level to the idea that the state is no longer legitimate because of the interests that it serves. Even those on the right are seeing the state in much the way it truly exists, as a tool for those with power over those without, with a police and a military who will enact violence on those who push back against the state. Canada isn't far behind, and many countries have had uprisings the last few years, and people are seeing the oppressive state as a tool for the wealthy and the powerful all over the place. One of the things that sovereign citizens get right is how the state apparatus isn't actually worthy of legitimacy. They understand that the monopoly on violence is illegitimate. They get that coercion is bad and that we ought not let the state dictate to us what we do with our bodies, or that we ought to be able to move freely or trade without interference. The trouble is that they think that this extends to things like health orders. These things, I'm not going to pretend that health orders, they do present a bit of trouble for anarchists who believe that the world should be without states. We will need to find a way to get everyone to take the health of those around them seriously and to accept scientific data. I personally think that this will be easier when there is no such thing as big pharma. But we will still need to contend with issues like this until we have established a new order where corporations aren't driven by profit and people can actually learn, accept, and trust scientific findings about medicine and health. I've said it before, and I stand by it despite it being an apparent contradiction with my other values, but nothing turns me into an authoritarian quite like talking to anti-vaxxers. Just get the fucking vaccine. In the same way that sovereign citizens think that they have found loopholes in the legal system that they can exploit, anti-vaxxers with no actual research skills think they have found a way to debunk scientific consensus. I think that the same mental faculties are being used in these two groups, and that's why you end up with such big overlap in ideas. One of the keys here is that neither of these groups is an expert in the area that they're discussing, and they ought to listen to those who are experts in those fields to inform their views. I'm no fan of the law, but I listen to lawyers when I'm forming my opinions about laws. I'm not a fan of big pharma, but I trust research scientists when they're discussing certain things. And I know that I don't have the knowledge to debunk or to counter the perspective of the scientific consensus. I will accept evidence as things change and as more comes out. If you can actually provide good logical reasons or good sound evidence as to why certain things shouldn't be the way they are, or one shouldn't accept certain consensus views, then I will change my views. As I said, though, one of the differences I see between the anarchist movement and sovereign citizens is that anarchists don't believe the state should exist, but we don't deny the reality of its current existence and the power that it holds, where sovereign citizens think that a type of state still needs to exist, but they don't believe in the legitimacy or power of the current iteration of states. That's why the sovereign citizens movement is so prevalent in Canada and the US, and you don't see a lot of that stuff in other parts of the world. Our states are actually very robust and powerful and weigh in on the daily lives of citizens a lot. And this results in a lot of pushback, but without a proper analysis of class, capital, and power. And the state holds, and it results in a nonsense set of ideas that contradict each other and rely on the state in order to subvert the state. Again, if it sounds like nonsense, it's largely because it is. I think they have the right sentiment, but their analysis sucks. So they have no idea what to do next, and it results in a bunch of appeals to the legal system in order to avoid the legal system. Again, I understand that sounds like nonsense. However, I don't know if there's anything else I can say about it. I just end up repeating myself, but feel free to email me if you have any thoughts on this, and I will try my best to address them. If you have information that contradicts what I said, then for sure, let me know. With that, I want to say thank you to all of my patrons and to everyone who listens or watches. Please make sure to share the show with your friends or family who may be interested in the perspectives of an anarchist who also happens to be a laborer in a conservative province. If you want to become a patron, you can do that at patreon.com/skepticalleftist, or you can send a one-time donation to buymeacoffee.com/skepticallefty. If you can't support my work financially, then a 5-star rating or a review on Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast review sites would be great. Also, the thumbs up thing on the YouTube, that's awesome too.